Good morning, church. Good morning. I thought about starting from back there, but I didn't want to worry you guys or give you a heart attack. But it's great to be here this morning. I know it's been a while since I preached, but it's great to see everybody here this morning. But before we really start, I just want to say, thank you to the veterans and those who willingly stepped up to sacrifice themselves so that we may have freedom to continue to worship, to continue to gather together in this place, where in a lot of places, just being able to gather together can cause harm to them. And so, I thank you for that. Let's take this opportunity to bow our heads and pray before we begin. Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you've done for us. Father, we thank you that we can gather together in your name, that we can worship you, because there is none more deserving than you. God, I pray that the words spoken this morning would be your words and not mine. That your Spirit would continue to flow through each and every one of us, and that we would be open to hearing you speak to us. That we would be open and obedient. God, we love you and we praise you. In the name of Jesus Christ, whose name we pray. Amen. So, for the past, I'll say several weeks, maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks, as the Pastor Dennis and Pastor Mike were going through the series of Go and Make Disciples, I kept this one thought that just kept popping over and over and over into my head was the word scar. And at first I thought, well, that's just random. Why can't I get this word out of my head? Why does it keep coming up? And then I started to ask questions. Why does it matter? At first I thought it was just a thought, but then the more it kept coming up, the more I realized that God was trying to tell me something. It's funny because I wasn't originally supposed to be preaching this morning. And when Pastor Mike and I started talking, and I was like, you know what, I think God's been trying to tell me something, and I think this will be the week for it. And it's interesting that it happens to be the week of Veterans Day, because the title of this message is BattleScars. Thank you for that. I wasn't sure how many people would get that. It's hard to see that in this week. But I just could not get those words out of my head. We've all been hurt. We've all been wounded. And we've all experienced things that, in one way or another, have affected our relationship, whether it be with people or maybe with Christ. And sometimes those wounds can either draw us closer to God, or they can pull us away from where He wants us to be. So I decided to look up what the actual definition of the word scar is, in the dictionary. And it writes as this: it's a mark left on the skin or within the body tissue where a wound, burn, or sore has not healed completely, and fibrous connective tissue has developed. The second definition is a mark left on something following damage of some kind. See, I can look at myself and look at because I have a lot of scars, physical scars that you can see. And Holly will tell you I'm just strange in that way. To me, I find them to be pretty cool. But a lot of people don't see them that way. I can look at scars on my knees when I started learning how to ride a bike. And I can tell you, every single time I fell, it hurt. And there was bleeding. There was all these wounds that I still have, that I can show proof that I not only learned how to ride that bike, but I learned to ride it pretty well to where I was confident in my ability to do it. You see, we all have physical scars as well as emotional ones. See, there are the physical ones are the ones that people see, but sometimes we don't want people to see our physical scars. And then we have those emotional scars, those things that have happened in the past that still affects us today. But we are unwilling to let people see those scars. See, we come together, we worship, and we try to act like we all have it all together. But we really don't. Every once in a while, we have those things that just become reminders for us that I can't believe that that was me, or I can't believe that that happened to me, or I can't believe that I made those choices. Well, that was interesting. But that's how we are as people, is that we hold on to the past, and not in a positive way. We hold on and look at the negatives of the past. We don't see the victory because we focus on the hurt. We don't see how far God has brought us because all we can see is how much we went through. See, when we come before God with wounds, with hurts and scars, He takes all those things and He starts to work in us, and He starts to heal us. The problem is we don't always go to God for our healing. We don't always go to Him when we need help. And so, I don't have points, but as I read and wrote this message more, that I wrote about it, is I just had questions. Questions that just kind of stirred my thought process, that kind of stirred my heart. And I hope that it will do the same thing for you. See, I decided to look up some non-physical examples of ways, people hurt. There's moving homes often, which I thought was interesting considering I've moved multiple times. But to a child, moving home often, starting new, leaving their friends behind, that's a big deal. And then growing up without a loving home. That's another one of the examples. Never being allowed to express yourself and your emotion. Not having someone to talk to or confide in. Not having any good role models. And I can see how each of those things can leave a scar in the lives of somebody. And as we've been doing this LEAP program, we've learned a lot about some of these kids. We've learned a little bit about what home life is like, or what's going on in their families. What I've come to notice is that a lot of them put up this tough act because they're afraid of getting hurt. They're afraid to open up to people, but that's not something you see in just kids, but you see it in adults as well, where we put up this tough act where we're afraid to let other people in because we get hurt by someone. And I think it was about a week or so ago where one of the girls in our program came in. She had gotten her hair cut, and if you see it, it's so easy to look at something and say, why would you do that, or to judge that behavior. But when we got to talk to her, Turns out that her mom had cancer and lost all her hair. And so she cut her hair because she wanted to support her mother. See, we don't learn, that we see that surface level of what's going on day to day, but we don't always talk long enough to people to learn about the deeper issues. Just to learn about the things that are really gnawing at them, the things that are really keeping them from maybe making new friends, keeping them from stepping foot in a church, keeping them from stepping foot in a place where people are talking about God and about how there's hope in God when all they've seen in their lives is hurt and pain. See, we talk about how God can heal us. We talk about all the things that God can do for us. But very few times are we willing to share with people how He's healed us. See, we can tell people that God is great, that God is a healer, God can do all these things, He can provide. But sometimes it's nice to hear from somebody about where you were and how God brought you out of it. And again, it goes back to how we look at our past. See, we're excited about the victories, which is great, but we're ashamed of our hurts. So we don't want people to know that we're vulnerable. We don't want people to know that we experience pain the same way that they experience pain. We don't want people to know that we need Christ as much as they need Christ. See, if the gospel is such an important part of who we are, and it's such an important word, then our past, our hurts shouldn't matter when it comes to telling people about who God is. When it comes to sharing the love of God with the people around us. And, the past 2 weeks or so, we've talked about building bridges. We've talked about reaching people. We look at the words go and make disciples as a one and done. Once we bring them in, we that's it. But that's not how it works. The relationship that you build with people doesn't stop once they come through those doors. You see, the more I thought about it, the more the question that plagued me is, are we ready? Because we talk about God wanting to do great things. We talk about going out, and if you pass out those cards, that's awesome. And if you've not, you're missing out on an opportunity. But when you pass out those cards, when you give them to people, are we ready for the result of who God is going to bring into those doors? Are we ready? Because we don't know the kind of hurt, the kind of pain that they've been through when they step through this door. See, God wants us to be obedient. He wants us to be loving, to be compassionate. Not just to the people that are like us or think alike. Not just to the people that act just like us, but people that maybe you wouldn't find in your day-to-day circle. See, it forces us to go out of our way to meet people. About 2 weeks ago, Holly and I would like to do a prayer walk around our neighborhood. And it had been a couple weeks since we had done one. And, I was still here in the children's service, and I messaged her and I said, hey, we haven't done our walk in a while. We need to do that as soon as this is done today. And so we went walking. And so as we're walking, one of the things we do is we stop at each intersection and we'll pray. And we stopped at one intersection, and I remember the exact words that I prayed was, I asked God to open the doors for us to meet the people in our surrounding area. You see, God has a way of doing things in a way that we don't expect, because I think He has a sense of humor. And literally, the next couple houses down, as we're walking, there was a neighbor with his wife and 2 kids just hanging out outside. He just started talking to us. And we started talking back and forth, and the next thing you know, we're sitting there talking to them for about 30, maybe 45 minutes. You see, when we ask God to open the door for us to do something, He will open that door. The question is, are you willing to walk through it? And one of the cool things about that conversation is that as we were talking to them, one of the first things they asked us after we started talking is, what's a blessing? See, we went on that walk with the mindset of we're going to pray around this neighborhood. We're going to pray for the people that live next to us, that lives right across from us. But God had something else in mind. The next thing you know, we're sitting down and talking to somebody about who we are, what we do here. You see, He presents us with all these different opportunities, but we miss them. We either refuse to acknowledge that He's asking us to do something, or we walk by like we didn't hear Him. But when we ask Him for something for ourselves, we certainly hear when He gives us the answer. It's amazing how our minds work when it comes to God. When it comes to being obedient and not being obedient, we can be very picky about when we choose to listen. So when we do our best to be bridge builders, to fill the gap, to stand in where Christ has called us to stand, we will encounter people who have been hurt in the past. We'll encounter people who are hurting now. I'm not saying that, you're going to have the answer to everyone's problem. But can you make the time to listen to the things that are going on in their lives? Sometimes all people need is somebody who's willing to listen. They're not looking for you to give them an answer to their problem. And I think Pastor Dennis has said it several times, sometimes we don't know when to shut up. And it's true. We're so busy wanting to be heard that we are not listening. See, if we're going to go around saying that we're the church, then we have to be active as the church. We each individually have to do our part. One of the scriptures that I'll be sharing this morning is from Galatians chapter 6. And it's verse 17, I believe. It should be up there. And this is Paul speaking. Where it says, "From now on, let no one cause me trouble, for I bear on my body the marks of Jesus." And then go to 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7 through 10. Where it says, "Because of these surpassingly great revelation, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness and insult, hardship, persecution, difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am strong. I want to focus on verse 10. See, Paul, I find the story of Paul very interesting because of who he was and who he became and how important he became to the cause for bringing the gospel everywhere. If you look at his life, where it's not that he didn't know the law, he knew the law very well, but he didn't know Christ. And he was one of the main speakers when it came to persecuting the Christians. In fact, he was on his way out to go and kill and arrest and persecute the Christians. And yet, on his way to Damascus, he had an encounter. Now, it's amazing how one encounter with Christ can change your life. You see, when he had his encounter with Christ, his eyes were open to who Jesus really is. And God told him that this was a man that would suffer. And he would show him just how much he would have to suffer for him. And he did suffer. And he wore, just like it says in Galatians 6:17, that he wore the mark of Christ proudly. We may not look at our past with joy, but we can look at the victory. And when we are Christians who live for Christ, and we are his servants, then that means that we're willing to do whatever he asks of us. See, we have it, in my opinion, I believe we have it easy compared to the Christians of that day, where people got stoned just for proclaiming their faith. People got hanged, crucified. People who willingly died because they knew that Jesus is the only way. See, how many of us are willing to die for our belief in Christ? If we bear the mark of Christ, that means that we will face persecution. We're not, he told us that people will hate him. People will hate us. But we still need to remain faithful and trust in him. And just like Paul says in verse 10, is that, can you find yourself being glad that you're facing insults? I know how I feel about anybody who insults me. But can you imagine going through life knowing that you're going to step into places where people will not want to hear a word that you have to say? They will throw insults at you. And then he tells you he will delight in those moments. Why? Because what God has in store is much greater than what any insult could bear. To be persecuted, to experience hardships. Again, the sufferings that we've experienced are nothing in comparison to Jesus dying on the cross for us, crucified. He wore those scars proudly. Are you willing to bear your scars proudly for the cause of Christ? Because life is not always going to be easy. The things that we go through are not always going to be easy. But if we walk through them with Christ, then we can be proud knowing that He will get us through them. See, when Jesus rose again from the grave and He showed up to the disciples and Thomas was doubting, he could have easily, not respond to the need because he wanted to see the proof that they were scars. And Jesus willingly opened His hand and showed him the scars in His hand, and He took the nails for each and every single one of us. And I'm not just talking about just the people in this room. And He took the nails for each and every single person inside and outside these walls. Thankfully, for each of us, we don't have to be afraid of being crucified. But would that stop you from sharing the gospel with people? It makes me wonder why, if we know who God is, and if we know the truth of who He is, why don't people want to step foot in church? You'll hear all sorts of reasons. There are plenty of people who will tell you they've been hurt by the church. If the church is supposed to be a place where you come together and worship, where you come to hear about God, to grow in your faith, to grow together, are we so blinded by our own desires that we're causing others hurt? How can we call ourselves a church if instead of bringing Christ to people, we're pushing them away from Christ? See, Jesus came to save and to heal. And if we're going to teach people about Christ, then we have to teach them about who He is. We have to accept them with their scars and all. Because we've all been in a place where we've been wounded. But yet, we knew who we could turn to help us in those moments. We knew we could reach out to Christ, we could cry out to Him, and He would help us. There are plenty of people who come seeking that same thing but don't find it. So instead they look for it in different ways. Drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be. They look for ways to fill that hole that only Christ can fill. And the question that I have is really simple. Are you willing to suffer for the cause of Christ? Are you willing to bear the mark of Christ as His servant? That's what we are. We are called to be His disciples, to go and make disciples. That means we'll go, we'll tell people about Christ. Some people will say, will be willing to listen. Some people will reject you. But they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting God. But we have to take the first step to be willing and to be obedient to respond to the calling that He's placed on each and every single one of us. The calling to go is not just for us as leaders in the church. It's for each individual in the church that calls themselves followers of Christ. This morning, I've been up for several hours, and I don't know why when God wants to tell me something, He wakes me up early in the morning to do it. But I was listening to this song, and I just could not get the words out of my head, and I remember I listened to it over and over again before I even stepped foot in this building this morning. And it says, bring your worries, grief and pain, every cause you have for shame, and lay it all down. There's nothing left to do when your cares have buried you. Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. In this verse 2 and verse 3, what really connected is, it says, carried on, but your heart was tired. You feared the worst and felt the fire, but lay it all down. Filled with all these anxious thoughts, all your doubts became your God. Lay it all down at the feet of Jesus. When we've given up on better days, there are memories we can't erase. Just lay it all down. We've come to fear what we can't explain. There's nothing here that can ease the pain. Lay it all down. You see, sometimes the memories, the pains, all these things, they just come back up and you don't want them to. And they start to bring you down. You have the option of letting it bring you down or to lay it down at Jesus' feet. I hope that the memories that you experience, the pain that you experience will in no way keep you from drawing closer to God. And if you've never experienced that encounter with Christ, if you don't know what it's like to lay it all down, there's no better time than today to do so. Maybe lately you've had these worries, these pain, these doubts in your mind, in your heart. I pray that you would take the time to lay it all down before Him. The altars are open for anyone who wants to come up and pray. If you believe that God can take care of you, take care of your worries, take care of your pain, if you're willing to trust Him and lay it all down. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you that we can come before you with all our worries, with all our burdens, that we don't have to be afraid because we know of all that you're able to do for us. And Father, as we continue in our time of worship, I pray that we would all lift our voices one, singing to you all praise, glory, and honor that you deserve. Thank you for your willingness to send your Son to die on the cross for us. Lord, I pray that we would not hesitate to lay our worries down before you. We give you all praise, all glory and honor. In the name of Jesus Christ, your Son, we pray. Amen.